And joining us today in studio is Sarit Zehavi, founder and president of the Alma Research and Education Center, which focuses on analyzing security challenges along Israel's northern borders and educating key influencers. Sarit, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So we are hearing, Sarit, that Yoav Gallant said that the army will soon be shifting focus from Gaza to the north. What do you think of this statement? Is it about time?
Look, I live 9 kilometers from Lebanon. We heard these statements many times since this war started. And I think when you have to shoot, don't talk. We don't need more statements. We just need deeds to bring the people back home.
Well, since you mentioned on a personal level that this is where you live, what is it like? Tell me a little bit of what is it like to be living in the north, that close, and being under threats all the time?
It means that we hear the blasts, we hear the interceptions, we hear the drones. It means that we send the kids to school and we feel that we are playing with their lives. It means that every time there is, a sound of a motorbike, we need to check whether it's not the sirens. It means that we don't have enough time to get to the shelters because we have 15 seconds to get to the shelter, and it's never enough unless you're right at the door. It means that our children don't have safe rooms in their schools, and they were instructed to go below the tables once they hear the sirens. This is an unbearable reality, and it shouldn't be this way.
Absolutely not. We're sometimes seeing more than 50 rockets in a single strike. Do you think that this escalation will continue?
Yes, there is no reason why it wouldn't. I think that the basic interest of Hezbollah is to preserve its achievement and maybe even expand its achievement from the beginning of the war that caused to the evacuation of 60,000 Israelis. We have 60,000 people that are displaced in Israel. They don't see a prospect of when they will be able to come home, and about 200,000 more that are living like myself.
Do you think that it was the right move to evacuate these 60,000?
I think we cannot judge the government about this one because the fears, and I was part of that back then at the beginning of October, were huge. Radwan Brigades, the elite unit of Hezbollah, was completely prepared to launch a massacre just like Hamas, and actually its original plan was replicated by Hamas. Hamas had done exactly what Radwan Brigades had planned to do, and nobody could promise us that they would not do that, so I think this was the safest thing to do back then, but at the same time, strategy is needed, and we need to build some kind of plan of how do we bring the people back home, and this was supposed to happen long ago.
So you mentioned that on October 7th and prior to that, there was a plan, just like the Hamas plan, to strike Israel from the north in a very similar way. Why do you think they didn't go through with it?
I also want to emphasize that this plan included the idea of taking people as hostages to become human shields. It was published in a video about 10 years ago, in a propaganda video of Hezbollah, that nobody believed that they were capable of that. But they were deployed on the border. Radwan Brigades were on the border. We could see them every day. When I was on the border, every day I could see them. I think there could be two options. Either they didn't know about the exact timing of Hamas, and they were surprised by the exact timing, and afterwards it was too late because Hamas was very successful, and Hezbollah didn't want to be second once Hamas was that successful. At the same time, the communities became empty very quickly, and IDF came up very quickly. So the chances to get the same achievement became much smaller than what Hamas had accomplished.
But do you believe that this threat still exists, that this still could be executed?
Yes, because the other option is that the Hezbollah and Iran wanted to have their own campaign and send Hamas first and then see what happened. And actually, I think that what is happening now serves the basic rationale of Hezbollah and Iran, and actually what we say is the Shiite axis, because what they want to cause, their end goal, is to bring the destruction of the state of Israel. But they understand that they cannot do that just in military means. And that's why their basic strategy is to create a war of attrition in various fronts. You see what happened yesterday in the Allenby Gate. This is all part of the same plan.
What do you expect of the government to be doing in order to avoid these kind of threats? Not even just the rocket threats, the daily rocket threats, but also threats that we mention here of an October 7th style kind of attack?
I think that for now, Hezbollah is not striving to send thousands of terrorists the same as Hamas because IDF is very much prepared. They could try to infiltrate with less powers. What the government should do, much more in any aspect, with defense, with offense, and with international community collaboration. All of these are going together hand in hand, and none of this is being done enough.
So it's not enough, according to you. There's significant debate about how to handle Hezbollah, and if this conflict escalates, a war erupts, do you believe that there should be boots on the ground in Lebanon, Israeli soldiers going in physically with boots on the ground?
Look, it is already war. Mm-hmm. It is already war for 60,000 people that are not in their homes.
It absolutely is.
So the big question is, how do we stop it and make sure that we bring them security? I personally think that the only way to do it is to make sure that the international community is supporting us. That's the basic. Afterwards, we can discuss whether it's boots on the ground or just the Air Force or maybe a diplomatic arrangement or I don't know what. Mm-hmm. But as long as we don't have the basic understanding of what we are dealing with, and there are still talkings about Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which is not the case in the north, not the case everywhere, but specifically not in the north, mm-hmm. I think that we are not going to get to any progress. The first thing that should be done is that all of us will understand what we are facing. And then, even if we go to any kind of diplomatic arrangement, it cannot fool us again. It cannot be a fiction again like the previous one in 2006. It should be something that have a very clear deadline, that have a very clear goals, that everybody understands that Hezbollah should be disarmed, and the capabilities of Hezbollah should be eliminated this way or another.
Now, how realistic is that Hezbollah will be disarmed? It's
hardly.
Very difficult.
Hardly.
A very difficult objective to achieve. And still, even if some kind of a diplomatic solution will be reached, will that give you, residents of the North, Israelis, a sense of security that you could go back home?
If it will be based on previous solutions, so the answer is clearly no. Since UNIFIL and Lebanese army are not the answer, they are not willing, each of them for different reasons, are not willing to clash with Hezbollah. So any diplomatic arrangement should be based on an international force, whatever it is, that will be willing to clash with Hezbollah. Otherwise, I agree with you, the chances are very low. And eventually we may end up with an escalation to something very, very different to what we experienced up until now. It's going to be much more difficult. The terrain in Lebanon is much more difficult. It's much bigger than Gaza. The Hezbollah is much more experienced than Hamas, and it's going to take longer. So I'm not sure we are interested in that, but at the same time, I'm positive that we must go forward and stop shuffling.
Do you believe that if a hostage for ceasefire deal is somehow reached, it doesn't look like it right now, but if it is somehow reached, will that stop the fire in the north?
It will stop the fire temporarily. I believe Nasrallah only in this. He is a good liar in other aspects. But I think that it's not going to bring us security, basic security.
And
because immediately Hezbollah will recover. If nobody is monitoring, Hezbollah will recover and will be capable of launching the massacre that it planned.
When do you think that residents of the North will be going back home?
Wow, that's the question that I ask every morning when I get up, and I truly don't know.
It's a very sad reality for a lot of these Israelis, 60,000 residents in the North, as you say, and of course we have many more in the South that have been displaced all year. And you told us a little bit in the beginning about what it's like to live under threat, to live in the North. Maybe you can elaborate about what you tell yourself in order to keep waking up in the morning under a very harsh reality, what you tell your children.
Look, at the first day of school, at September 1st, my little girl, she's 11 years old, she came back and she said, "Mommy, they told us to go beneath the tables. Do you think it's effective?" And, you know, on the one hand, I want to give her the reality. I don't want to lie to her. And on the other hand, I do have to present resilience and not to make her afraid anymore. And to hear all these blasts around us, my dog already broke 2 doors. it's not the nice, peaceful village that I used to live in. I'll put it this way. The only way to find resilience is to look at the Israelis, actually, to tell you the truth. Like, my center is composed of Israelis from the various sects, religions, backgrounds, and political opinions. Mm-hmm. And the Western Gully by itself is the same. And we live together, and we are very proud of that. And this gives me a lot of hope.
Well, hopefully the peace will come to your region and to the entire state of Israel. Thank you very much for being here today.